Alrighty, welcome back, Michael Brantley, to the Houston Astros. You chose to come back on one-year deal to possibly win another World Series, and we're going to talk about this and more on this edition of the Locked On Astros podcast.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Astros, your daily Astros podcast. Here are your hosts, Eric the Man Huysman and Brett H-Town Wheelhouse Chancey.
We are Locked On Houston Astros, and
hello and welcome to Locked On Astros, your daily Astros podcast. Here are your hosts.
All right, let's try this again. We are Locked On Houston Astros, and we hope that you join us for a daily Locked On Astros podcast. My name is Eric Huysman. You can find me on Twitter at Eric Talk Astros. Find the show at Locked On Astros, your team every day. Brett, where can they find you at?
They can find me at H-Town Wheelhouse on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. They can find me at Stros411 on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Always positive. I love Uncle Mike coming back. Always Stros.
All right. I know that there's a lot of on Saturday, John Heyman basically said the Astros are looking at three people: Michael Brantley, Michael Conforto, and Jerkson Profar. That's somebody we're going to talk about in a little bit. But the Astros went with the guy they know. They signed Michael Brantley to a one-year deal, $12 million with $4 million in incentives if he reaches a certain level. And that would bring him up to $16 million, which is basically what he's played for each year during his time with the Houston Astros. So I think that this would be a good move for both sides. I think that Michael Brantley needs to prove that he can still play. I know he missed a lot of time last year. I believe he only played 64 games in 64 games in 2022. He batted .288 with 5 home runs. He still had a OPS plus of 125 and limited at bats. So this guy is still productive. We're going to argue a little bit later on. You might want to tune into this about where you're going to bet Brantley in this lineup, but he's back with the Astros. What do the Astros do from here? Are they going to make any more moves? But you know what you should do from here? You should go ahead and make the Locked On Astros podcast your first listen every day. Whether it's on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to us and go ahead and listen to us on Apple, Odyssey, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Check us out.
Yeah, Eric, this is great news. Michael Brantley coming back. I know he's coming off of a injury but I believe it's his non-throwing shoulder. But nonetheless, that does affect your hitting. He is a year older. But he's still a guy that when you put in this lineup with Abreu, you basically, to make a dart reference, since we were playing darts this weekend, this is basically one big bullseye. Because if you just throw a dart at this dartboard, you're going to hit the bullseye. Because from top to bottom, this lineup is stacked. And it makes the Maldonado situation seem a little bit less worrisome because now you have Brantley back, a sure bat. And we'll talk about the batting order. And there's all kinds of different philosophies behind who you bat where, but you bring back a guy that not only is a contact hitter, Eric, but is a guy that is a force in the clubhouse that was motivating guys when he wasn't playing and got to win his first ring. And even though he wasn't there on the field contributing, he was there contributing in the clubhouse. He's your ultimate team guy. He's a Houston guy now. He's settled here. And I think this is great. And everything I've heard about Jose Abreu, everything I've heard of, just about how he interacts with the clubhouse, working in now with Brantley, a seasoned veteran, this lineup is going to go out and do some damage. The shift is gone, and we'll talk about that in the second segment, how that affects 3 hitters in this lineup. But I think that the Astros offense is going to take off. I think you're going to see Jose Abreu's power numbers return. I think you're going to see Jose Abreu hit a lot more because think about the lineup he was in last year. His power numbers were down, but they had so many injuries, Eric. He didn't have a lot of people around him protecting him. One thing this lineup has, it has protection.
All right, so I know Mr. Corona asked, more importantly, how much till the Astros hit the luxury tax? Before this, it was about 36 million available before they hit that threshold. I know that Jim Creighton said that they have the resources to go above and beyond, or just right at it. But you do want to kind of not really hit it, because if you have to make a trade deadline moves, that those salaries do count against you. It's where you finish at the end of the year, technically. So what the Astros have 36 million. Now you take away 12 million, possibly 16 million if he reaches those incentives. And we hope that Brantley does, because that means he had a heck of a season. He played most of the games. He had consistent batting average, all that. But that leaves them with about $24 million left. So I know a lot of people want to talk about Yuli Gurriel. Do we have enough to bring him back? What about Jerks and Profar? Do we have enough to sign him? I know the Padres declined a $8 million option for him, and they paid him $1 million to let him become a free agent. But he would bring some flexibility to this team. So, but Brantley coming back is just great. Not only does he bring that veteran leadership back to the clubhouse. I know we saw that in the playoffs, because when the team was struggling against the Phillies, it was Michael Brantley who kind of stepped up and said, "Hey guys, we're better than this. Let's not just go quietly into the night," to quote the 4th of July or Independence Day line from Bill Paxton. But definitely it's something that we need. No, Bill Pullman, is that?
Yeah, I don't think it was Bill Paxton, but yeah, I don't know the actor's name, but yes.
Yeah, I think it's whatever. But the president had, "We will not go quietly into the night," and that's what basically Michael Brantley did. He said, "We're not going to just we're better than this," and they went on to win the World Series. He's a veteran leader. He's a contact hitter. He's a guy that doesn't strike out a lot. He's left-handed. That's what the Astros were going out to do. And I think that what the Astros did is they got the cheaper version than Michael Conforto. I know everybody's like, well, you don't have to give him big bucks to bring Conforto in. You forget that his agent is Scott Boras. Scott Boras is not going to let him sign a incentive-laden deal. He's going to try to get a multi-year deal. He's still young enough. Yes, he's coming off a season where he didn't play. He had shoulder issues as well. But still, I think that Boras is wanting too much for Conforto. So I think the Astros were more comfortable giving the money to Michael Brantley.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I honestly, I don't think Brantley and Conforto were in the same. I wouldn't put them in the same category. I think Brantley is always the better bet. I think Brantley is always the better player. He's the better contact guy. He's got the better career numbers by far. He's got a great on base percentage, and that's where you get into the lineup, because people are already asking us. So, do you put him at 2? Do you put Pena at 2? Where do you put these guys? What you want is the top of the order, Eric. You want your highest on base percentage guys at the top of the order, so that when you have your contact hitters up, they can knock in someone. Or if you've got a guy that is basically a slugger and he has a lower on-base percentage, it doesn't hurt as much lowering that player to a 3 or a 7 hole. And this lineup, whether you put Abreu 3rd or 2nd or 5th, whether you put Pena 2nd or 3rd or 7th, or wherever you put these guys, as long as they take ownership of who they are and what their role is, it's not going to matter where they bat, to be quite honest. I know Dusty likes to go with the right, left, right. You have that ability to do that through most of the lineup. And I think you're going to see guys like Chas McCormick hitting 9th, Eric, because you want that guy getting on base where the lineup resets back to the top. And then you have Jose Altuve. But Michael Brantley coming back, I think, is huge, because they got him on a budget deal for the most part. I honestly didn't see him going everywhere else. The parody Twitter account Fact Sports had a fake quote by Brantley, and he said, "I didn't feel like." What did he say? I didn't
pretend like I almost signed with the Blue Jays this time.
Yeah, something like that. So I thought that was a nice take on that. But having him back is huge. I mean, look, the Astros could have done 2 things, Eric. They could have gone all in money-wise and brought back Verlander. The reason why they didn't do that is because their pitchers and their pitching development and the way that they develop these pitchers, the way that they've structured this pitching staff, they haven't had to. And what has happened ever since we signed Abreu, you would have thought on social media that the Houston Astros had created the worst team since the Pittsburgh Pirates and that everything was going to hell in a handbasket. And everyone's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? We got 2 big holes, and Crane said he was going to spin, and now he's not spinning. And all these negative Nancy's were coming out just in force. And all of a sudden, Brantley gets signed. I don't suddenly hear a lot of complaints about Martin Maldonado. Funny how that works. But I don't think we had to worry about him anyways. He was never a hindrance last year. I mean, when did Maldonado keep us from winning a series or keep us from winning a playoff series? I don't think he did, right? This lineup is stacked. This lineup is scary. And no, New York, Houston, we don't have a problem because of Rodon. Those pitchers, Eric, are 0-6 in the playoffs against the Houston Astros. So I'm not worried about New York.
All righty. So I know in a second, we're going to address what everybody wants to talk about. Where should Michael Brantley bat in this lineup? It's hard to bet on this because at the end of the day, it's going to be Dusty Baker's decision, but you can definitely look at the decision that Bet Online would make. Where would Michael Brantley bet? I'm sure there's some type of odds on that. It's your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and World Cup. I know it's ended today, but or getting close to ending, whatever, but we've got it all here at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you'll even find those at Bet Online as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get the betting info. And now that the Yankees have all this pitching and everything going on, did that increase their odds of winning the World Series? I don't know. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet Online, it's where the game starts.
Hey, what's up? Sorry, I was interacting with our TikTok crowd while you were doing.
Yes, and I forgot to mute you while you're doing that. And so, yeah, we're trying to use this new service called StreamYard. And since the Restream was having little issues today, so that's why we don't have our normal little setup here. But I kind of like the setup, and eventually we're going to be going to this this server. I think.
I just wish I could throw the comments up on the screen. I'm not able to do that. I've got.
Oh, you can't? Okay, that's right.
Yeah, I don't like this version because I don't have control like you do. So you're kind of the Wizard of Oz. We pulled back the curtain and we know who's pushing the buttons today.
Okay, so if y'all want me to put your comments up there, y'all can go in to Venmo me some money or something. So,
wow.
I'm kidding.
I'm kidding. Oh, hey, real quick. I want to let y'all in on a little something. It's really nice when we hear about different people who watch our show. Okay. Seth Payne from Sports Radio 610 is a fan of our show and basically sends his regards and said, keep up the good work. And then one Jose Abreu at the Astro line gathering where him and Pena were, one of our faithful followers and listeners was there and talked to Abreu. And Abreu basically said he had been trying to get up on like the Astros culture and the Astros community. And this follower said, well, you should watch the Locked On Astros podcast. And Jose Abreu said, and I quote, I've seen Locked On Astros. I really like the show. I've watched them a few times. Yes. So, Mr. Abreu, thank you for listening so much. Welcome to Houston. And hey, maybe we get you on the show sometime.
And it makes total sense. He's the guy that's a culture guy. He wants to know what's going on around the Houston Astros. So yeah, it makes total sense that he would watch us. He'll probably watch the guys at Apollo and all the other podcasts around, just because he wants to know what people are saying about the Houston Astros and like all the different the talk, I guess. So a lot of people want us to discuss where we see Brantley batting. Historically, he's the two-hole hitter. And I know that Dusty Baker typically likes to put the veteran guy, the guy that makes good contact, the guy that doesn't strike out a lot, the guy that can advance Altuve once he gets on base. And that is Michael Brantley. But the problem is, if you do that, then you're going to be pushing I mean, Bregman is a good hitter in his own right. I'm not discounting that. But then if you put Brantley batting second, you're going to have to put Bregman third, then Alvarez fourth, and then Abreu fifth, and then Tucker all the way back sixth. And then Pena, who was your MVP in ALCS and the World Series, all the way back to seventh. So,
but lineups aren't made because people win awards. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's
wow.
well, they're not. Okay, let's look at the on base percentage. Jeremy Pena has a 289 on base percentage back in 2022. Kyle Tucker has a 330 on base percentage. Michael Brantley 370. Jose Abreu 378. Jose Abreu has a 378 on base percentage. Now,
Okay.
my thing is, Eric, if you move Pena down, and look, we know that Dusty is a player's coach. He's a player's manager. And he fought the front office to keep Pena at the 2-hole. And if Pena deserves it and Pena earns it, he got rid of a leg kick, I believe, and he started making more contact. So overall, his numbers aren't great compared to the others, but they got better over time. So here is the thing, okay, with Jeremy Pena. You can protect him, and this is my case for moving him down. You can protect him in between Tucker and Abreu towards the bottom of the lineup if you're going to have them down there and keep, you have Altuve, Bregman, and those guys. What you can do, no matter where you move him around, Eric, you can put people around him where he's not by himself. So I will tell you the lineup that I put out there. I put two different versions, and one of them you said you really didn't like. So I'm going to share that one second. How's that?
Okay.
Altuve, Brantley, Bregman, Alvarez, Abreu, Tucker. Then I put Pena, but I actually want to put Abreu, Pena, Tucker. I want to put Tucker seventh. The fact that I'm putting Tucker seventh infuriates me because he deserves to be higher. But in this lineup, he absolutely it's not a demotion in this lineup, Eric. That's just how good this lineup is. And I've got McCormick and Maldonado rounding that off. Now, originally I had put Altuve, Brantley, Pena, Alvarez, Bregman, Tucker, then Abreu, then Maldonado, then McCormick. Look, here is the tough part. After you get through 1 through 4, 5, 6, 7, who do you put in that seventh spot? Because your 8 and 9 is where your weakness is. I think McCormick goes. I think Maldonado is 8th, just because if he's 9th and he gets on base and Altuve gets up, you want Altuve to drive in McCormick because of his speed. Where Pena feels comfortable, if he feels comfortable in the 2 spot and he can up his on base percentage, keep him there. But I think you've got to, at this point, move him down, put Brantley back. Now, this is if Brantley's healthy. This is when Brantley is ready to hit. I'm not saying put him in there if he's still a lame duck nursing an injury. You bring him along. But what a great problem to have. And I don't know that any of us knows the exact answer, but that's why the reason why I moved Pena to third in that one lineup is because that was the right, left kind of pattern. So tell me, what do you think? Do you think Pena holds his spot because of Baker loves him in that spot? Or do you think the addition of Abreu and bringing back Brantley changes that whole equation?
I think that you keep Pena there mostly because you want Alvarez batting third, and he's your best hitter. You typically hit your best hitter third, and I think Bregman does a good job in the cleanup spot. So I think that I know Brantley has historically been that 2-hole hitter, but we saw Dusty Baker fight for Pena to bat second last year. I know Brantley was in a picture, but he was able to see the breaking pitches a little bit better. He was able to hit the slider a little bit better. He was able to see the pitches a little bit better, hitting in front of Alvarez, Bregman, and everything like that. So if you want him to excel, I think you keep him where he is, and you're going to see this kid shine. Now, Michael Brantley, he could hit anywhere in the lineup, and he could still hit. He doesn't need lineup protection. So, and if you go ahead and put him batting seventh in my order, so just flip-flop Pena and basically Alvarez where he bats seventh, then you have a deep lineup where you have a veteran guy who's a on-base guy, and you don't have to worry about somebody batting seventh striking out every time. you have a guy that's going to make contact, drive in a whole bunch of runs, because you're going to have a whole lot of runners with that 1 through 7. So at the end of the day, it's not going to matter. But
Okay.
I think Pena, if you want the most production out of Pena, he's got to bat second.
Okay. So I thought at first you were kind of making my case by saying that Bregman was such a good hitter and drove in runs. But if Pena has an on-base percentage that's almost 100 points lower than Michael Brantley, then chances are that Brantley's going to be on base more than Pena is.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but that was going back to before he was moved up to the second spot.
Well, I'm just talking about his overall average was 289 at the end of the season is what I'm saying.
But he didn't have that protection the entire season, Brett. He was moved back there and got protection.
Well, all we have to go off of are the actual numbers, okay? And I think another thing to kind of give an argument towards you and towards your side, okay, because there's a right and a wrong, and we always know I'm right. No, I'm joking. Is you have speed with Pena, okay? Right. You have sorry, I almost said speed with Altuve. He's not as fast as he used to be, but I guess
he still had 18 stolen bases or something last year.
You're going to have more stolen bases. You're going to have more base path guys. So do you bring up Tucker like to fifth? Do you bring up Tucker because he's got speed? I mean, could you pat Tucker fourth? And this lineup, I am so thankful to the Lord above that I am not manager of this team. Like, I would love it, but I don't know how I'm going to crack the code of this team. And that's why I use the analogy of the dartboard being a bullseye. I think no matter what you throw at this dartboard, it's going to be a bullseye. And what I love about this team, Eric, is they are selfless. They are not so all up in themselves and their feelings that Pena is going to pout and sit on the bench or refuse to play because he's not batting second, right? Abreu, what?
I have the answer here. Justin brought it up. He said, "What is Pena's number batting in the 2-hole?"
Okay.
And here's the stats. So batting second last year in 219 plate appearances, Pena batted 290 with an 837 OPS with 13 home runs, 31 RBIs, 60 hits.
What was his on-base percentage?
837.
His on-base percentage was 837?
Oh, sorry, on base. Sorry, 315.
Okay. So it's better than 289. It's still 378, but okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so batting seventh last year, he batted 268 with a 733 OPS with 5 home runs, 20 RBIs, 44 hits. So that's by far where he hit the most.
Maybe because he had more protection.
Yeah. And he's a young kid. And so I think that's a big portion of it. So that's why he started hitting the breaking pitches more. He started seeing pitches more because he had that protection. Okay, well, I got to throw pitches to this kid because Alvarez is behind him, then Bregman, and then you have the whole rest of the lineup.
And here is another thing. Someone on TikTok actually brought this up. They're like, Michael Brantley does get hurt every year. Maybe keeping Pena and some of these guys in the places they're familiar with, and then saying, okay, Brantley, we don't know if the knees are going to act up. We don't know if the shoulders are going to act up. So we're going to slot you in. And that's what, again, I think this team doesn't really have, I don't think it's as difficult of an issue as you and I make it, being novices, not being professional coaches. I mean, look, here's the deal. If you commentate on baseball and you're not a former big leaguer like Blummer or Bagwell, I think those guys hold a lot more validity. I know that a lot of the talking heads and stuff have been around baseball, analyzed baseball a lot, but there is definitely a chemistry thing here, and that's where this club excels. They don't have an ego problem, and dude, who knows? Maybe Maldonado hits better this year. Maybe Maldonado fixes his swing a little bit, and maybe he gets on base a little bit more, hitting in that 8-hole, because they know Maldonado gets on, McCormick's gonna move him over, and then Altuve is gonna hit the ball. You know what I'm saying? They've got so many chances this year to not only hit the long ball, but Eric, when I look at their shift charts, and we can't show it up here because we don't have Restream right now, but right now, if I look at pull percentage, okay, Kyle Tucker, 40% pull percentage. Michael Brantley, 38% pull percentage. Okay. Jose Abreu, he is at 35.2 pull percentage. And if you look at the heat maps on Savant of where they play these players, dude, Tucker, Alvarez, these guys are going to absolutely go off this year. And we may see a lot more runs scored from the Houston Astros. And I really like what they have to do. But here's a question, Eric. Are they done making moves? I mean, are they are they sold on the Diaz Lee backup? And if they're not, they've got Alfaro, and then they also have Tucker Barnhart who are out there. And I know those names don't wow people, those names don't excite people, but here's the question you have to ask yourself, Eric. Here's the question you have to ask: is do the Astros trust the two young catchers as the backup this year, or do they want veterans as backups? And if you can answer that question for me, then that will give you the answer you're looking for. But if you can't answer that question, you don't know what direction they're going to go until they get to spring training and they have those guys on the roster or not.
Right. I don't think, yes, they would love to add a veteran guy like a Tucker Barnhart or a Jorge Alfaro, but I just don't think that they have a huge desire to do that. They wanted to go get one of the big guys. They're gone. So, there's some other guys still out there, but at this point they're like, okay, well, we spent $12 million on Michael Brantley. Maybe let's go, instead of upgrading catcher, why don't we go and give Jurickson Profar a chance? He's a guy that could play second base. He could play shortstop. He could play left field. He's a guy that can be your Ledmus Diaz, and maybe not. I don't know how much he would cost you, but he's had a great season last year, batted .243. I know that's not great, but with 15 home runs, and he had, I don't have his stats open, but I think it was like 5 to 8 stolen bases and OPS into 700s and OPS plus of like in the 100. So he did have a fairly good season for him. He's kind of had an up and down career. He used to be a top overall prospect, but depending on the price, that wouldn't be a bad person to add so you didn't have to rely so heavily on a Diaz or David Hensley as a guy so early in their career. But to answer your question, I think that spring training will decide who the backup catcher is. I think at this point, if you're thinking bat-wise, we've talked about this before, Diaz is ahead of Corey Lee, probably at the major league level. But Corey Lee is definitely the better catcher overall. Right. And I think that Diaz's position of the future is probably going to be replacing Abreu once Abreu is done after 3 years. So he'll probably be a DH or something like that if he's still with the Astros. He could be part of a trade.
Or we have Sandro Gaston El Tanque, who's coming up in a few years. He could be the future first baseman. There are so many cool names, and I just want to reiterate, wherever the Astros are building now, they're building for the future even as we speak. There is a lot of really good conversation going on here in our chat about various people. World Traveler, she was like, I don't like Barnhart and Alfaro. That's why they should have signed Vasquez. The reason why they didn't sign Vasquez is because he wanted to be the starter. He would absolutely not have been a starter here. And so the reason why they are talking to or reaching out to Barnhart is because maybe they want a veteran backup catcher. They want to have maybe a third catcher available, and that becomes a Diaz or Lee. I can tell you right now, David Hensley absolutely will be your utility guy. He will be your guy that goes all over the field. He's going to hit for average. He's going to be a high walk guy, I bet, here in the major leagues. And you're going to see him. Hensley's going to take over that role that Diaz had. And don't forget that in the outfield, we've got Justin Dearden in AAA, and we have Pedro Leon. And so we've got some depth there. Now it's unproven depth. It's prospect depth. It's
Colin Barber too.
Colin Barber had a couple injuries, last year. I don't know if you'll see him this year. It depends on how much he increases, but I know in front of Barber are Dearden and Pedro Leon. I think
Jolks too.
Leon. Julks is still here, but here's the deal. This is what I'm hearing. Corey Julks actually is really looking to possibly be released at some point because I think he wants a chance to play. I think he wasn't selected in the Rule 5 draft. I think he was hoping that, and he really wants to see what his possibilities are because he's 26, 27 years old. And people I know that are close to his situation say that, he wants basically playing time, or he's going to want to be able to go somewhere else to pursue his baseball career. And he's possibly looking overseas right now as well.
Okay, so to kind of close out the show, I know that a lot of people in the chat are asking about Yuli Gurriel. Now that we brought back Michael Brantley, why don't you bring back some more of the fam and go ahead and bring back Yuli Gurriel? I just don't see it happening. I mean, it makes sense a little bit, but it would be basically a bench role at this point, and he would not have a starting gig because there's not really a starting position open. He could play first base. He could play some of that utility role we talked about with Jerks and Profar, but how much would he want? Would he be willing to basically step aside from being an everyday starter? Does he have an option from another team? But I would think that the Astros may want to bring Yuli back. I mean, the clubhouse seems to like him. The fans like him. So it just really depends on how much. So would they? I don't know. But who are they going to replace? Jake Myers? I mean, I know the front office is there's still some people in front office that really like Jake
still has
Myers.
a place.
Yeah.
I mean, Jake's not, obviously Jake's not in Yuli's situation where he's a free agent, but Jake has more of a chance to be on the roster than Yuli at this point. I literally have heard zero about Yuli Gurriel. Have not heard any interest, any talk, any chatter, anything. So I've kind of accepted the fact that maybe Yuli's time here is done as a player, and maybe I've heard Miami once, but nothing more than just a mention of Miami's reached out to him. But who knows? If he comes back, it's got to be a super discounted deal. It's got to be a super reduced role, like you said. I think like we made the case many times on this show. But if he comes back for a decent price and he's willing to take that reduced role, I mean, he fits in the clubhouse. Why not?
Yeah. So he wouldn't be a distraction by any means. And I think that especially with Abreu and Alvarez, it'll just kind of further the Cuban connection. And then once Pedro Leon comes up, it'll just be good. But yes, he could play DH, but you already have Alvarez who's going to be playing DH. And how much are you really going to have Brantley out in the outfield? We don't really know.
He's going to be DH left field.
Yeah, I know. But how often is Brantley going to be out there? Because we know that one thing about Alvarez, he may not be the best defender out there. He's not bad, but he's got a heck of an arm. He can throw people out at the plate, and I don't know if Brantley really has that in him after his injury last year. So he still has to pass a physical, but I'm glad to have Michael Brantley with the team. He's one of the most professional, one of the most pure hitters out there. And he may not hit for 22 home runs like he did with the Astros the first season. But one thing that I want to end the show on a positive note, in 2019, he played 148 games. In 2020, he played 46 games. In 2021, he played 121 games. In 2022, he played 64 games. So that meaning he's going to play in the hundreds this year. Every other year.
I was like, how is that positive? We only played 60-something games.
So just following pattern. I'm a math teacher, so I'm just following the pattern there. So
okay. I get it.
Go and close out the show, Brett.
All right, man. So, once again, Jose Abreu listens to Locked On Astros, number one. Number two, we bring back Michael Brantley. Uncle Mike, welcome back. Number three, sorry, New York, you have a problem, not Houston. And this team just continues to get better. I trust Jim Crane. I love the owner of this team. I think they're going to have great success this next year. So for myself and Eric the Man Huysman, you can find us at Locked On Astros. You can find us at Eric Talk Stros on Twitter. You can find me at H-Town Wheelhouse. And remember, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check us out on Odyssey, Apple, Google, or Spotify. And after you've made us your first listen, why don't you go to Locked On Today and make them your second listen? That's right. They have the latest stories and everything you need in under 30 minutes They will talk about Messi. They will talk about the Texans almost beating the Chiefs and so much more. The take of the day, go to Odyssey or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, we're always your team every day. Go Stros.